When they told me the job was classified, I should have known something was wrong. I'm just a mechanic, Marcus Webb, 32 years old, specializing in deep space vessel repairs, and in 15 years, I'd never been blindfolded for a work assignment. Until that Tuesday morning when 2 men in unmarked uniforms showed up at my workshop on Station Kepler 7. "We need someone who doesn't ask questions," the taller one said, and I almost laughed, because asking questions is literally half my job. But the credit transfer they showed me had enough zeros to keep my mouth shut for a while. They led me through corridors I didn't recognize, down 3 service elevators, and finally removed the blindfold inside a hangar I'd never seen despite living on this station for 6 years. What I saw made my breath catch. A ship unlike anything in our fleet, all sweeping curves and dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, covered in symbols that definitely weren't human. "You've got 48 hours to get her flight ready," the tall one said. The previous engineer couldn't handle it. I wanted to ask what happened to him, but something in their expressions told me I really didn't want that answer. They left me there with a basic schematic that looked like someone had tried to translate ancient poetry into engineering diagrams, and I stood in that cavernous hangar feeling very small and very confused. The ship's boarding ramp opened with a whisper-quiet, pneumatic hiss that was way too elegant for any human vessel, and I grabbed my toolkit and headed inside, my heart hammering because this was either the opportunity of a lifetime or a really elaborate way to get rid of me. The interior took my breath away, corridors that curved organically like the inside of a seashell, lighting that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves with a soft blue-white glow, and controls that were both completely alien and somehow intuitive, as if designed by someone who understood that form and function could be the same thing. I'd been working for maybe 20 minutes, tracing what I thought was a power relay problem, when I heard footsteps, light and precise, coming from deeper in the ship. My pulse spiked because I'd been assured the vessel was empty. I grabbed the plasma cutter from my belt, not much of a weapon, but better than nothing, and turned just as she appeared around the curve of the corridor. For a moment, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing, because she looked almost entirely human, a young woman, mid-20s maybe, with the kind of delicate features that made me think of old earth paintings. High cheekbones and full lips, skin that seemed to have a faint luminescent quality like pearl under the strange lighting. Her hair fell in silver-white waves past her shoulders, and she wore fitted tactical pants in deep midnight blue and a sleek, high-collared top with geometric patterns that caught the light. But it was her ears that gave her away, elegantly pointed, extending slightly beyond what any humans would, and her eyes, large and intensely violet, that watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You're not the usual type they send," she said, her voice accented in a way I'd never heard, musical and slightly layered, as if 2 voices spoke in harmony. I realized I was still holding the plasma cutter like an idiot and lowered it slowly. "I'm the mechanic," I managed. "Marcus Webb." They didn't mention anyone would be on board. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. "They wouldn't. I'm supposed to be dead." That statement hung in the air between us like a live wire, and every instinct I had screamed at me to turn around, walk off the ship, and forget I'd ever seen her. But I've never been good at listening to the smart part of my brain. "Dead according to who?" I asked, and she moved closer with a grace that seemed almost weightless, each step precise and controlled. "According to the council that overthrew my mother 3 cycles ago," she said, and I noticed her hand resting on the wall, fingers spread, and the ship's lights brightened slightly, as if responding to her touch. "According to the treaty your government signed recognizing the new regime. According to everyone who matters." The pieces started clicking together in my head: the classified job, the blindfold, the ship hidden in a secret hangar. "You're Lyria royalty," I said, because I'd heard the news reports about the coup on Valor Prime, seen the footage of the elegant silver ships retreating from Earth's diplomatic stations. "Not just royalty," she corrected, and there was pain in those violet eyes now. I was Lyria Vel'Thara, first daughter of the Queen Ascendant, heir to the Resonance throne. Now I'm just someone trying to stay alive long enough to matter." She studied my face as if trying to decide something important. "Are you going to report me?" It was a test, I realized, and maybe the real reason I'd been brought here. But as I looked at her, this young woman with a queen's bearing and a fugitive's desperation, I found my answer coming easier than it should have. "I was hired to fix a ship," I said, "not to ask questions about the passengers." The relief that crossed her face was subtle but real. and some of the tension went out of her shoulders. "Then you're already better than the last 3 engineers they sent," she said. "One ran the moment he saw me, the second tried to sabotage the ship to trap me here, and the third, she trailed off, and I didn't push. The primary fusion coupling is failing," I said, deciding to focus on what I actually understood. "Your power distribution is running at maybe 60% efficiency, and there's a cascade risk in the starboard coolant systems. With the right parts and time, I can fix it. But I need to know, where are you trying to go?" Lyria turned away, her hand trailing along the wall, and the ship hummed softly, a sound I felt in my chest more than heard. "Somewhere far enough that my mother's murderers can't reach me," she said quietly. "Somewhere I can gather allies, evidence, proof of what they did. My people think I died with her in the palace bombing. If I can show them I survived, show them the truth." She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. I'd heard enough court intrigue stories to fill in the blanks. "That's going to require more than just getting the ship flight ready," I said. "You'll need enhanced shielding, better sensor masking, and these power systems can't handle a long-range jump in their current state." I was already running calculations in my head, already seeing the solutions despite knowing I was probably signing up for way more than a simple repair job. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly, turning back, and those eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me feel exposed. "You don't know me. You have no stake in Valyria politics." It was a fair question, and I took a moment to consider my answer. "Maybe because someone willing to risk everything to save her people deserves a working ship," I said finally. "Or maybe because everyone deserves a chance to set things right." Something shifted between us in that moment, some invisible line crossed, and Lyria's expression softened into genuine warmth. "Then let me help you, Marcus Webb," she said. "This ship was bonded to my bloodline for 3 generations. I know her better than anyone alive." Over the next 30 hours, we worked in a rhythm that surprised us both, me explaining what needed to be done in mechanical terms, her translating it into the Valyri understanding of their ships as living things, extensions of will shaped by resonance technology I barely understood. I learned that Valyri nobles could interface directly with their vessels, that the ships responded to emotional states and intentions as much as control inputs, that what I saw as purely mechanical was actually a hybrid of technology and something closer to telepathy. "Your people build things to be separate from you," Lyria explained, as I watched her place both hands on a central column and the entire power grid reconfigured itself, following her thoughts. "We build things to be part of us. It's why outsiders struggle with our ships. The technology expects intention, connection." I watched in fascination as patterns of light flowed from her hands into the ship's systems, spreading like roots or nerves. "Show me," I said impulsively. She looked surprised, then pleased. "Give me your hand," she said, and when I did, she placed it on the column beside hers. The sensation was unlike anything I'd experienced. Suddenly I could feel the ship, not just as metal and systems, but as presence, aware in some fundamental way, damaged and hurting from neglect and failed repairs. I gasped and almost pulled away, but Lyria's hand covered mine, steadying me. "Breathe," she said softly. "Just listen. Feel where she needs healing." And somehow, impossibly, I could sense the fracture in the fusion coupling, not as a mechanical failure but as pain. Could understand exactly what the ship needed, not through diagnosis, but through empathy. "This is incredible," I breathed, and Lyria smiled, really smiled, transforming her face from merely beautiful to absolutely radiant. "This is resonance," she said. "This is what they took from me when they killed my mother and scattered my people." We worked through the night cycle, and as the hours passed, I learned more than just Valyri engineering. I learned that Lyria hummed when she concentrated, a multi-toned melody that the ship seemed to harmonize with. I learned that she hadn't eaten into days because she'd been rationing supplies, which explained why she looked so thin, and I made her eat half my rations despite her protests. I learned that she'd been 11 years old when she first bonded with this ship, that it had been her mother's gift for her ascension trial, that she'd flown it in the ceremonial races above Valor Prime and won, making her mother proud. I learned that on the night of the coup, she'd been in orbit when the bombs fell, that she'd felt her mother die through their bond, a psychic scream that had nearly killed her too. "I couldn't save her," Lyria said quietly, as we worked on the shield generators, her voice thick with old grief. "I felt her calling for me, and I couldn't reach her in time. I just ran. What kind of heir abandons her queen?" I stopped working and looked at her directly. The kind who survives to fight another day, I said firmly. You think your mother would rather you died there too? Lyria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I think my mother would rather have a daughter brave enough to stand and face death than a coward who hides in forgotten corners of space. The pain in her voice was raw. And without thinking, I reached out and took her hand, not for resonance this time. Just for human comfort though. I immediately worried I'd overstepped some cultural boundary. But she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers tightened around mine. Listen to me, I said. I've known you for barely a day, but I can already tell you're not a coward. You're planning to go back, to fight an entire regime, to risk everything for your people. That's not hiding. That's strategy. That's survival with purpose. A single tear traced down her cheek, and she brushed it away impatiently. You barely know me, she echoed my thought, but her tone was different now, wondering rather than dismissive. Why do you care? And that was the question, wasn't it? Why did I care about this alien princess and her impossible quest? Maybe it was the resonance bond we'd shared, giving me a glimpse into her heart. Maybe it was the loneliness I'd heard in her voice that matched something in myself. Or maybe it was simpler, maybe she was someone worth caring about. Because you matter, I said finally. And maybe I'm tired of fixing ships for people who just want to use them for profit or politics. Maybe I want to help someone who actually gives a damn about something bigger. The ship's systems came online with a deep thrumming sound that I felt through the deck plates. And Lyria's face lit up as she sensed the change. You did it, she breathed, and then, more excited, we did it. She actually laughed, a sound of pure joy that made her seem younger, less burdened, and impulsively pulled me into a hug that surprised us both. For a moment, we stood there in the ship's core chamber, her arms around me, the scent of her hair something like night-blooming flowers filling my senses. And I realized with a jolt that whatever this was between us had become dangerously real. She must have felt it too, because she pulled back, a faint blue blush coloring her luminescent skin. Sorry, she said. We don't. Valkyrie are not usually so demonstrative with outsiders. I didn't mind, I said, and the way her eyes met mine said she didn't either. But before either of us could say more, the ship's proximity alarms screamed to life, and Lyria's expression went from soft to deadly serious in an instant. Someone's coming, she said, her hands already on the console, and I saw the sensor display showing 3 ships entering the hangar bay, not human designs but Valkyrie, sleek and predatory. How did they find you? I asked, already knowing the answer wasn't good. They didn't, Lyria said grimly. They found you. They've been monitoring the station for anyone searching for Valkyrie engineers, anyone trying to repair ships like this. I'm sorry, Marcus, I've gotten you killed. The fear in her voice sparked something stubborn in me. Not yet, they haven't, I said, my mind already racing. Can you fly her now? With the repairs we've made. Lyria was already strapping into the pilot's chair, her hands dancing across controls that lit up at her touch. She'll fly, but we won't make it out of the station. Those are Talon-class interceptors. Twice our speed and 4 times our weapons capacity. I looked at the schematics we'd been working from, an idea forming. What if we don't outrun them? What if we outthink them? I pointed to the station's power grid connection we'd been using to charge the ship. The hangar's magnetic containment is designed for human ships. It won't compensate for resonance frequency disruption. If you can overload your engines while still connected to the grid, Lyria's eyes widened as she understood. It would create a feedback pulse that would disable every system in the bay, including their ships, and give us maybe 90 seconds to get clear before everything reboots. I finished. It's risky, it's brilliant, she interrupted, and her smile was fierce and wild. Strap in, Marcus Webb. Let's see if a mechanic and a dead queen can cheat fate. I threw myself into the co-pilot's chair as the ship's engines began building to a scream. Felt rather than heard, the Talon ships powering weapons. And watched Lyria's hands move in patterns that were part piloting and part ritual. The resonance built until my teeth ached with it. Until the lights in the hangar began flickering and sparking. And then Lyria spoke a single word in Valkyrie, sharp and commanding, and slammed her palm down on the release. The world went white and soundless as electromagnetic chaos erupted, and I felt the ship lurch as the docking clamps disengaged, felt the sudden acceleration as Lyria pushed the engines beyond safe limits, felt the stomach-dropping sensation of a ship designed for grace and precision being flown like a fighter jet through a hangar door that was still only half open. Metal screamed against metal, sparks showered across the view screen, and then we were out. the station falling away behind us as Lyria banked hard and dove toward the nearby debris field, where sensors would struggle to track us. Are they following? I asked when I could breathe again, checking the sensors with shaking hands. Not yet, Lyria said, her attention locked on, threading the ship through chunks of ancient satellites and broken hull plates at speeds that made my engineer's heart scream. But they will be. That just announced to everyone watching that I'm alive, that I have a working ship, and that someone helped me. She glanced at me, and there was apology and determination in equal measure in her eyes. You can't go back to the station, Marcus. I'm sorry, but they'll arrest you for treason or worse. The reality of that settled over me in the span of 48 hours. I'd gone from simple mechanic to fugitive, from anonymous to targeted, and somehow I wasn't as upset about it as I probably should have been. So where do we go? I asked, and the use of we wasn't lost on either of us. Lyria was quiet for a moment, navigating us into the shadow of a broken frigate before cutting the engines to minimal power. There's a place, she said finally. 3 weeks from here at Standard Cruise. An old Valyri outpost abandoned during the expansion wars. My mother took me there once, showed me the vault where we kept records of everything history, treaties, the evidence of every alliance and betrayal. If I can reach it, if the records survived, I might be able to prove what the Council did, prove that the coup was illegal, that the treaty with Earth was signed under false pretenses. She turned to face me fully. But I can't ask you to give up everything for a cause that isn't yours. If you want, I can drop you somewhere safe, somewhere far from this mess. I met those violet eyes and found my answer was already decided. Your mother's killers just tried to kill me too, I pointed out. That kind of makes it my cause now. I leaned back in the chair, feeling the subtle vibration of the ship around us, still half connected to it through the resonance Lyria had shown me. Besides, someone needs to keep this ship running, and you, Valyri, are terrible at actual mechanical work, too busy communing with the engine to notice when the seals are degrading. Lyria laughed, surprised and genuine, and I realized it was probably the first time I'd heard her laugh without grief shadowing it. Is this what humans do? Make jokes when they've just become interstellar fugitives. It's what this human does, I said, with a grin. Fair warning, I also sing when I work, and I'm terrible at it. The ship will probably complain, Lyria said, her tone light but her eyes serious. Marcus, you understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't a repair job that ends when the ship is fixed. This is a war that might take years, that we might not survive. That could leave you exiled from your own people. I thought about my small workshop on Station Kepler 7, the endless parade of merchant ships needing the same boring repairs, the quiet loneliness of a life that had been safe and predictable and ultimately empty. Then I thought about the last 2 days, the wonder of resonance bonding with an alien ship, the satisfaction of solving impossible engineering problems, the fierce hope in Lyria's eyes when she talked about saving her people, the way my heart had jumped when she smiled at me. Lyria Vel'Thara, I said carefully, I've spent 15 years fixing other people's ships so they could go on adventures I'd never have. I think maybe it's my turn. Something shifted in her expression, walls coming down that I hadn't fully realized were there. You asked me earlier why you should help, she said softly. Let me ask you something else. What if I told you that resonance bonding, what we did with the ship, is incredibly intimate for my people? That normally it's only done between family or, she hesitated, between those who share deep trust and affection. That letting you touch the ship's heart like that was the closest thing my culture has to saying you matter to me. My pulse kicked up because the air between us had suddenly become charged with meaning. I'd say that I'm glad I managed. Because you matter to me too. More than makes sense for today's. Resonance doesn't follow time, Lyria said, and she reached out, her hand, finding mine in the space between our chairs. It follows truth. And the truth is, I felt something the moment I saw you, not fear or suspicion like with the others, but recognition, like my soul knew you before my mind did, her fingers intertwined with mine. And I felt that same sensation from the ship connection. Awareness, understanding, but deeper now, personal in a way that made my breath catch. Is that a Valyri thing? I asked, my voice rough. Or a you thing? Both, she admitted. We call it Velshan, the resonance of hearts. It's rare, especially across species. My tutors said it was impossible with humans, that your minds worked differently. But, she touched her free hand to my temple. And I felt a rush of emotion that wasn't entirely mine, hope and fear and determination and something warmer, something that made my heart race. I think they were wrong, she whispered. I think the impossibility is what makes it real. We stayed like that for a long moment. The ship quiet around us, the debris field hiding us from pursuers. The universe narrowed down to the warmth of her hand and the truth in her eyes. So what happens now? I asked finally. Lyria's smile was equal parts fierce and tender. Now we run, we fight, we take back what was stolen. Now we prove that a dead queen and a mechanic can change the fate of worlds. She squeezed my hand once before releasing it and turning back to the controls. Now we find out what happens when two impossible people refuse to accept that they're impossible. I settled into my chair, already pulling up system diagnostics, because even miracle ships need maintenance. And I realized I was smiling. Sounds like my kind of job, I said, and as Lyria plotted our course to the unknown, I knew I'd made the right choice, not the safe one, not the smart one, but the one that mattered. Behind us, the station's lights were tiny pinpricks, already fading, and ahead of us lay 3 weeks of close quarters, dangerous space, and uncertain futures. But I'd helped a queen reclaim her hope, found a connection deeper than I'd imagined possible, and discovered that sometimes the best repairs aren't the ones you make to ships, but the ones you make to hearts, including your own. As we jumped to faster than light speed and the stars stretched into streams of light around us, Lyria began to hum that multi-toned melody again, and the ship hummed with her, and after a moment, I found myself humming to off-key and terrible, just as I'd warned. She laughed, bright and free, and said the words that would stay with me through everything that came after. You were right, Marcus, you really are terrible at singing. But somehow, with you, even the wrong notes make a perfect harmony, and as we fled into the unknown together, I decided that was the best summary of us I could imagine. Two impossible notes that somehow, against all odds, created something beautiful.